Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
It's a beautiful Wednesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Kikyolu.
And hope you had a wonderful night. I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome.
And we hope it ends well. The meeting between the federal government and ASU. So I beg your pardon.
Well, it didn't quite end well yesterday, obviously.
It's still going on, so maybe eventually we hope it will end well.
But the same thing happened with the FG, IFG Labour meeting also ended in a deadlock. The one with ASU and SANU and NASU also ended in a deadlock.
So we should expect the same kind of template scenario. Yeah, there'll be deadlock at some point, and then they disagree to agree, and hopefully they move forward because they have a committee now.
Yeah, they set up that committee, according to the Minister of Labour and Productivity for them to earn all these things. But what I'm wondering, guys, is why do we have to wait so long? It's an agreement since 2009, for God's sake. It's an agreement since 2009, signed by both parties. I thought government was a continuum.
Well, we think so. I mean, that's the ideal, but clearly we've seen that things like this are not entirely black and white. I think this is like the template for resolving issues. Sadly, this is the template we have seen for resolving issues, labor issues generally. Don't forget, we had this with ASU and the federal government, which lasted, the strike lasted for almost, in fact, an academic year, let me just say that, for most of last year. And some will say it hasn't quite been resolved because ASU says, well, we're suspending that strike. We're not calling it off. It's a suspension to see how things play off. So there's that on the one hand. And you referenced labor regarding the electricity and fuel price hike. We've seen deadlocks yet again.
Too, the same thing.
Exactly. And now with SANU and NASU, and I think my concern really, which I talked about before we came on, is the fact that it would seem not much attention is paid to the non-teaching staff in universities. We pay attention to it, but it seems once you see SANU, NASU, you're like, oh, it's not ASU, right? Oh, okay. Let's move on. But clearly, that should not be, because they have as much stakes
the danger
in the university as much as ASU.
You know the danger in that?
Yeah.
It's like paying attention to your face and what you wear and not giving attention to your internal organs.
Oops.
Yes, that's it.
That's an angle.
No, seriously, that is it.
Boy.
For instance, we're talking about COVID-19, right? It doesn't show on the face, all right? It all happens on the inside of your system. And ASU and SANU and NASU are exactly that. The non-teaching staff, the cleaners, the finance department, the admin department, these are the people there, the gate men and stuff. These are the people who make the engine of a university system work. So not giving attention to them is as good as not giving attention to your internal organs.
But when you talk about the challenges dating back to 2009, it may just come across as though, okay, well, if they've not been going on maybe like heavy issues on strike for, as frequent as you might have thought, it may appear as though, okay, well, maybe they're making headway, or maybe some of those admissible given time. But some of the recent issues that brought this to a head is they're complaining about remember the 40 billion naira earned allowance that was released to them? They say, look, how you give us 75% and we 25%, 3 unions go with 25%.
We saw that coming anyway.
And they thought, come on, how is this going to happen? So what will government do about that one now? Because you don't want to, if you pull the rug off ASU's feet, what happens? So not easy to be in government at this point in time to negotiate some of these things. And then, remember the several other matters they've raised other than that earned allowances. They talk about the challenges, the problems they face having been on IPs.
Oh, yes.
They want that addressed. Yeah. So what happens? Are they also going to come up? They say, look, we have our own formula. Put us on our platform.
I can't exactly remember the name, but they have their own platform.
Is that GIFMIS? Or there's also...
No, but they have one that they developed, just like ASU developed their own UTAS.
But GIFMIS was there before.
What's sad, guys, is everyone in government today passed through an educational system. largely university system. And well, we can talk about the ministers and political appointees, but how about the people working on the inside of those governments? People who have been there since before 2009, who are part of the meeting, who are supposed to be executors of the agreements of the federal government,
the
pass
civil
the memos, the civil servants.
The ones that they want to join the political party? Oh, no, maybe I was just thinking aloud. I'm just wondering if
no one should force you to join a political party.
But that's a separate conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But you know, the issue right there is the civil service. Just as you said, once you put the civil service, you compel civil servants to be part of any political affiliation, then government is gone. It means that everything that has to be done according to the interest or the dictates of a particular political party.
Imagine if that was the case before this government came into power.
Exactly. And, we continue to reference the First Republic as a reference of our heydays. All right? Now, in that time, there wasn't such a thing. It was the system. The civil servants looked the politician in the eye and told them the gospel truth.
It's interesting you bring in politics because, I mean, we don't see politicians protesting or saying, well, we need more allowances, we need more funds.
That happens.
So, I mean, it's really sad.
It happens.
Oh, it happens.
Yes.
And they form committees.
Fisticuffs and stuff like that.
No, I mean for essential issues. Because when you draw when you try to, weigh this, it's sad that this is what we do to our education system.
Yeah.
Like you said, a lot of them went through this. Now we have students going abroad just to study, and imagine how much they actually spend. That's a huge industry on its own. So if we pay enough attention to politics and all that, we should pay as much attention to it.
I think it only underscores how futuristic our thinking is. That's the honest truth. There was a day you were saying that the educational system is supposed to be the brain of any nation, where the ideas of national development are supposed to come from. So if those institutions are not given due attention, they are not given their dues, so to speak, how are they going to think right? I mean, it's like you hungry. How can you think?
So society can be sick then? If you don't have
I'm not saying society is sick, but I'm just saying.
No, if we don't get that right, society will be sick.
That is
if we can't think our way out of a problem, what's the way forward?
That's what's happening right now. Most of the people who came up with the policies that helped the Babangida government at the time, a number of those policies, though draconian at the time, many people referenced them as amazing, policies at the time. They came from the university system.
And it's a democracy. We have to see how we could develop that culture and let ideas contend. That's how you get a healthy society.
Absolutely.
Let the superior ideas take the day. We may not like it, but if it's a democracy, if someone has a superior idea, let's go with it, as long as it works for everybody. Well, let's take you through what some of the dailies are saying this morning. We'll start with Vanguard newspaper today. Eviction. Protect Fulani in the South. NEF tells Buhari governors. So, no letting up on this one, you reckon? Says no politician has right to outsource security to local thugs, gangs. Look, this, when they say the chicken has come home to roost, or when they say something could bite you in the bum. Remember, we raised this several times, several elections. Who are those that get political thugs? What do they use political thugs for? So after you arm political thugs, you use political thugs, and then that period between when there's no election and the next cycle, what happens to those people? So look, what you sow is what you reap. If you sow, so some of these kind of things, that's why we talk about addressing the problem, the challenges in society headlong. Now, this is one of the riders. Of course, you're not justifying any of these things. You're only saying cause and effect. It's a natural principle of life. Act now before situation degenerates, Bashir Tofa. How Ondo or your others can manage herders' crisis, Benue Deputy Governor. You saw that yesterday. Bandits invade Niger communities, kill 21, kidnap 40. Guys, sometimes as journalists, when you read this on a regular basis, sometimes you may just see it as figures. You think, oh yeah, one of those headline stories. These are people. These are real people. Air Force helicopter drafted to communities. Injured, rushed to hospital. 6 masked bandits in black kill locals in Kaduna community. Herder settlement attack in Zangon, Qatar reprisal. You know, we say this over again. If you pick up newspapers in different parts of Africa and you look at the headlines, you see ours, you think, are they at war? What is going on? And so look at all of this now. In terms of what's happening, you see killings there. Look at different groups. Now tell me, in all of these groups, where do you see those who've been arrested, who have been prosecuted for having done one thing or the other to serve as a deterrent to others?
Beg your pardon, a good number of people have said over and over again that we are walking a dangerous path of politicizing security. That's what happens. I mean, at least a good number of people have said, for instance, we're talking about this banditry, armed robbery, and all of that now. How about electoral violence? You know, over and over again on this program, we have raised the issue, how come electoral violence, electoral offenses are not prosecuted? What happens to the people that are arrested? Police will say X number of people have been arrested. How many of them have been, prosecuted? How many of them have been jailed and stuff like that? So,
well, there you
we're
go.
still building the nation, sincerely.
Oh, yeah. How many years on? Well, take a look at what's on the back page. Champions League. Liverpool's clash against RB Leipzig under threat. You may want to find out why. Chelsea give Tuchel condition for contract extension. Already talking about that. That's Vanguard today, guys.
We'll take a look at Daily Trust leads with security. Attacks on Fulani in Southwest. Act now before we lose Nigeria, Tofa tells Buhari. 1 killed as hoodlums raise herders settlement and market in Ogun. And that's why you see pictures on the front page showing the aftermath, not, what happened, but the result of what happened. Northern Elders Forum urge Fulani to resist temptation. Igbo's strategy may lead to tribal war. That's coming from Nans. And seeing how security, or do I say insecurity, has lingered, how it is always something we talk about, and we look forward to act about it. You begin to wonder, is there a business in this, really?
Well, you never know, because remember when, I think it was Kaduna State Governor, at the time certain people were threatening others, saying leave a certain part of the country. He was talking about arresting those people. Make sure these things don't go any further. And what was done? Nothing. Now, it was as though you're telling your child, do what I say, not what I do. Children are impressionable. Now, some other person are copying that example. Now, how do you go to equity with clean hands? If you didn't do anything then, how do you want to do something now? And people will see you as just. Remember justice. So it's a cycle.
That's what sentiment will do. But see this one right under those pictures. You see, you're trampling on the law. Lawyers tell Buhari over IGP, of course. So, the president is back.
Yeah, but if we don't have an IGP, according to the law today, so who's the IGP? It's vacant.
Goodness.
Are we walking the same trajectory as the service chiefs?
Well, I think that's...
There was a handover at that point. But in this case, if his tenure is lapsed, if he's going to be retained, then we're going to know. If he's going to go, then people need to know. Because right now, according to the law, they say
we don't have an IGP.
We don't have an IGP.
Well, is he in office right now? I don't know.
Oh, well, he welcomed the president, so...
Well,
page 4 of the Daily Trust, and a couple of other stories. There's another one, which you referenced, the bandit story in Niger State. There's also sports news at the back page. I'll leave you to do that. Let's leave it there for the Daily Trust.
The Nigerian Tribune has this one. Very troubling, I dare say. Northern elders to Fulani. Return to North if ejected from South. Definitely not what we want to hear if one Nigeria is what we have talked about since as far back as I can remember. I look at the writers. Attack on Fulani unacceptable. Tension brewing. So according to Tofa, Fulani returning. We're living in fear again. Ibarakpa land farmers. Strides of 200 Amotekun officers in Ibarakpa will soon become visible. Subscribe to the commandant. Iganga youth didn't walk out on Makinde, farmers secretary says. Igboho's visit. One dies as hoodlums destroy Fulani leader's house and Kara market in Ogun community. Igbomino resists influx of herders in Kwara. That is ascribed to, well, you'll find the details on the inside pages of the story, pages 5 and 6 to be precise. Right under the picture you see there, Fayemi tells Chatham House, Nigeria mobilized $95 million to combat COVID-19.
Ready?
Well,
Did we?
it's on page 7. 80 million doses of vaccines expected in 2021.
And see what? I'm counting the dollars, huh?
Well, you're still calculating the $95 million?
$95 million plus.
So, okay, well, right, page 7, right?
Okay.
The back page has sports. Wow. I'm not confident if Messi will stay at Barca. That's common.
What?
Well, it's on the back page.
No way.
Of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Wasn't he forced to actually, well, kind of forced to stay back in the first place? I
all his life is been
he needs to move on, especially if he. I mean, you know, there's that debate
Elmondo
over.
didn't help him publishing all his contract details. So like, oh, come on.
But I think he helped
You guys want
parents
to
really.
push me out.
I think a lot of parents now really saw what football can do, and they're like, you know what, all of you need to start playing football.
Are they playing normally or felele?
Well,
starts from somewhere, right?
Leather balls. That's what they're doing now.
But where?
Well, let's look at The Guardian for you this morning. You see right there on the front page, delay costs federal government additional 679 billion naira on road projects. Oh yes, all of this, dilly-dallying around projects costs money. And you see there's a rider as to why. East-West Road tops with 515 billion naira. Official links contract variation to inflation FX crisis. So yes, foreign exchange has gone up. The dollar to the naira has added at least 100 naira since last year. So you can imagine if a project was earmarked for the 2019 or 2020 budget, which was signed in January and hasn't been done, then COVID pandemic hits and we're in 2021. You can imagine how much has been added or how much the naira has lost in relation to the dollar. And as a result of that, what has happened to projects locally, or what is happening to them locally. You might want to read details of that story, which continues on page 2 of the Guardian newspapers this morning. They also have the story for you. New petrol rule wants forex parity between NNPC marketers. Again, this forex palaver, it will seem. PPRA to resume issuance of monthly pricing guide. Will respond soon. NLC Nupeng declare Nimasa MPA to collect charges in Naira. 50% reduction. So perhaps some of the compromises being reached are enumerated for you on the front page there. Just beneath the nameplates, they have that story as well. Northern elders ask Fulani herdsmen to relocate from south. I think there should be some reaction to this by governors in the south. There has been some meetings being held with some factions of the Herdsmen's Association. We don't know how far-reaching that has been, but to see headlines like this truly should disturb anyone. And, there should be some communication as to what exactly is going on with regards to this. You also see this story there, 21 killed, 40 kidnapped in Niger. That's human beings we're talking about. 21 human beings lost their lives in one fell swoop. You might want to read details of the story on page 5 of the paper. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Well, take a look at Nigerian News Direct now. Insecurity. We need state police now. Lagos lawmakers. Well, you need to read the story to find out. Are they members of the Lagos State House of Assembly, or are they the representatives in the National Assembly from Lagos So that's why you need to read these ones, because if it were those from the National Assembly, I know the question is going through your head, and they could be valid. But if it's those from the Lagos State House of Assembly, the questions on your head could equally be valid in terms of, well, you know where to go to talk to your members. The Speaker, is also, I think he'll have a listening ear to Lagos lawmakers. They talk about constituency, so perhaps that could fall in on a regional basis. So you never know.
But also the state lawmakers will have a say eventually in this whole constitutional review and all that. So
big if to see what happens. Will they ever be on the same page?
Goodness.
Kyari commends President Buhari's non-interference in NNPC, but is the minister? He is the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So what does that non-interference mean? Okay,
Because the ministry is meant to oversee the affairs of.
because he's the minister
But you might want to
and president.
Oh yeah. So maybe context in this case. All right, let's take a look at New Telegraph for you this morning, which leads with Northern elders to Buhari protect herders from eviction. You see, riders, Akeredolu, we must expel foreigners perpetrating crimes. Lawan backs end to open grazing. Reps back governor. And PDP to US. Prevail on president to protect Nigerians. That's the lead for the New Telegraph this morning, pages 3, 4, and 26, I believe. But take a look at the picture. It shows President Buhari returning to the nation's capital. And right there, you see the Inspector General of Police with a salute. So, yeah, there will be a lot of talk.
Yeah, as to what do we call him now?
Well, the president is back to office, so maybe he would speak to that. Maybe. He should, actually, just to clear the air. Let's know what the thinking is. I think it's
Because
quite
there's already
important.
rumors making the rounds as to who is what or who's coming in, if who's going out.
Goodness. And you see that story about 2023 general election. Electoral Act amendment will reduce violence. That's coming from the Senate. As INEC engages stakeholders, malls, polling units, delineation. You talked about that, Dan. I mean,
Sound bites.
these things are all related. Electoral
Absolutely.
violence, and also this is quite important. Well, Chamberlain says it's soundbite, so
Yeah.
there you go.
The leadership newspaper this morning is also talking about security or a lack of it. Lead story, return home. Northern elders tell herders, find that story on page 4 of the paper this morning. Seeks justice for Fulani communities attacked in Southwest. Ask governors to provide accommodation for evicted herders. Stop anarchy. Adopt ranching. Naaba, Utomi, Melafia tell federal government. Thought the federal government already came up with the National Livestock Transformation Plan with the
Controversial one?
Well, it's the Ruga that's the controversial one.
No, it's people also thought, no, that was going in a particular way. Yes, the government said they were well intended, but remember what we say about this messaging.
Messaging.
How do the people internalize
Perceive
them?
Messaging. That's usually the problem.
Which we were just hoping that, okay, let's take a look at that Daily Times now. Okay, there you go. FG1s on forfeited assets misappropriation. The big one you find on the front page of Daily Times here this morning. National Assembly to pass new Electoral Act in June. Well, look, it's not just about passing it. How many did they pass the last time? Was it not 3 or 4? Was it signed? You know the answer. So, but it's good to see that they address this. Pass it first. Let's see.
I'm still waiting for the PIB. April?
That's April.
April?
A lot
So
of
you see,
dates.
The clock
April,
is ticking.
then a month break, then June. So you get 2
The clock is ticking.
of what you're asking.
PIB. So long as it will make the people of the Niger Delta feel better.
And then the Electoral Act, so long as it makes the people of Nigeria feel better.
Yes, especially that. And activate the local government systems.
I ain't asking too much. One step at a time now. No, let's not bite more than we teach. Why not in the National Assembly, remember?
Come on, please. That's where the government really is supposed to be.
Okay, if you say so. Well, that's a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. Continuing our focus on security. I mean, you saw, I've heard the headlines. If you listened in while moving around in the house, is acceptable. But there are concerns in different parts of the country concerning how do we handle all that is going on without all of these things just blowing up in our hands. As you've seen in that welcoming slide, we've got His Excellency Okezie Ikpeazu, Governor of Abia State, joining us this morning on the program. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us today. We heard
Thank you very much. Good.
Okay.
Thank you and
State
good
Governor
morning.
And Chairman of Southeast Governors Forum, talking about their approach to grazing. He talked about how they've banned open grazing. Could you give us some background? Because some may ask, okay, if that were the case, do the states have laws to back it up? Does your state have laws to back that up as well?
Yes. Abia State was one of the first states that came out with a legislation banning open grazing. And our argument is that Abia is perhaps the smallest state apart from Lagos in land area in Nigeria. And we have a lot of minerals and crude oil beneath the soil. So God did not endow us with sufficient land to permit open grazing and leaving our land for cattle grazing. But we are saying that our interest is not to generally profile the Hausas or the Fulanis as people are doing now. We are interested in the criminal elements. I think Nigeria is supposed to do a proper diagnosis of the problem and treat it accordingly. We are not diagnosing the problem properly. We are just diverting the attention of serious-minded people in this country. We have people who are interested in creating ungoverned spaces, create anarchy and confusion, so that opportunistic anarchists like the ISIS and all those people who are interested in destabilizing countries and nations across the world will come in. What will happen when we eventually disseminate and cause disaffection between ourselves is better imagined. So I want, right from the federal government down through to the local government, for everybody to come on one page and have a policy dealing with criminal elements wherever they may be found, irrespective of state of origin, business, vocation, or background. The selective dissemination of punishment and sanctions against people suspected criminals or criminals as they may be is a panacea for anarchy. And I think we have more serious issues in our hands than we are prepared to admit at this point.
You know, we're beginning with laws because over time we have seen that, yes, we see attacks, we see these reports, but it's rare to see prosecutions. That's why we started off with the laws guiding open grazing in your state. And as you said, yes, the Control of Nomadic Cattle Rearing and Prohibition of Grazing Routes and Reserve Bill was signed into law years ago in your state, yes. And, you know, some of the provisions, it provides that entry of trade cattle into the state shall be by rail or by road haulage. It also prohibits driving of trade cattle on hoof through any road or environs into the state. So yes, the laws are there. And I recall that last year at the State Assembly, one of the lawmakers, was complaining that people in his area, Umunochi, have been terrorized by Fulani herdsmen. Those were his words. So if there are laws really against that, in fact, it stipulates punishment, how is enforcement? Because that was one of the things that was spoken about at the State Assembly, that these laws need to be enforced.
Yeah, thank you. You recall that before now, Abia is not been on the front burner regarding these herders and farmers conflict. Reason is that we have a strong mechanism through which we deal with the normal and usual cattle headers. I give you an example. We have what we call Farmer Header Conflict Resolution Committee from the state, where the CP is chairman, to the local government, where the executive chairman of various local governments chair. And members of that committee include the Mayor Tiala, the Malam, and the DSS, and the DPO of the various local governments up until the state. And we pay compensation of about 100,000 naira for any cow that is killed on account of a misunderstanding between the farmers and the headers. And we pay compensation of the same amount of money for farmlands verified to have been trampled or destroyed by stray cows. So we have used that to make sure that at least we give some succor and buffer to frayed nerves, so that when people disagree, they can wait for that committee to look into the matter before taking laws into their hands. But that is not to say that we have not experienced a spike in the presence, regarding the incidence of these criminal elements that come in and abduct, kidnap, rape, and destroy, kill farmers. More often than not, some of these criminal elements don't even have a cow. They are just infiltrators, and they use the cloak, or what they perceive as some sort of protection for the headers that seems to be the body language at the center to commit their crime and get away with it. And our people have a tradition of being very nice to visitors, because there's a proverb in our place that if you kill your visitor, that doesn't mean you are a strong man. So they are taking advantage of this good nurture to unleash mayhem. We have noticed that, and we are on their trail, and we are targeting those people, and we are going to rout them, we are going to punish them, and those are the people we cannot guarantee their safety. But for anybody who is doing genuine business in our climb, government will do everything to protect such an individual.
Your Excellency, you began by saying, among other things, we are not diagnosing the problems significantly. What exactly do you mean by that? And what are those problems, and how do you suggest we really take them on? Because it would seem like the security challenges are shape-shifting.
Yes, the problem confronting us as a country today is existential. Yesterday, it was religion. You are either a Muslim or a Christian, and there are biases in offices, people who superintend over the affairs of this country that are supposed to foist unity, ask you to fill out forms, and you mentioned your religion, and then you could be punished, or you may not get what you want because of your religion. Then the other one is ethnicity. Yes, you could. We've had that all along, but it's taking a new dimension. There's another one, partisanship. So these are some of the issues that are etching off on the pillar and the fabrics that hold this country. But I'm saying that people, anarchists, and those who are professional in destabilizing countries, taking up arms against nations and creating enclaves, are in the wings. They are already within us. The time we had Yusuf doing his Boko Haram, if I still recall my elementary house, Boko Haram means no book. They don't want Western education. So is that what they are talking about now? We have allowed that to fester until these opportunistic anarchists have stepped into the frontline states in the north. And now the next dimension is the one they call bandits, and they take up arms even against, so we have two major groups coming in. And I'm sure that those who have intelligence on this will trace them to ISIS, trace them to problems in Libya, Mali, and all of that. And now in the southeast, we are beginning to treat. There's another group that is coming up, calling themselves Eastern Militant something, and then everybody is watching. What I'm saying is the aim of these people is not. There's no philosophy behind what they drive. There's no motive behind what, except that they want to create ungoverned spaces. They want to create ungoverned enclaves for these professional anarchists to step into our country and eventually destabilize the country. So what I am saying is that the security agencies should come up with a strategy and a device that is science-based, that is technology-based, that will target these problems and deal with it with the ruthless vigor that it deserves. If we continue to pamper the issue and pamper the problem, their agenda is devilish and they are determined to execute it. And I think we are giving them, we are diverting the attention of Nigerians and giving them the opportunity to do what they plan to do.
Well, Your Excellency, at the heart of all of these problems, a good number of people have said, and I think you have also inferred it in a way, is poverty and unemployment. So many people have said, some reports have also come up, with the fact that at the heart of all of these security challenges that are shape-shifting, kidnapping for economic crimes, banditry for economic crimes, rustling for economic crimes, at the heart of all of it is unemployment. And of course, the president had said that there is a plan to take 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over the next 10 years. You're a governor. How easy is that? And as a governor in the Southwest region, how do you see that being taken on?
I agree with you. Unemployment and poverty are what I would regard as concomitants of the general malai. They contribute to the issues. But how would burning of a police station and burning of a courtroom create employment for anybody? The easiest way to move from being unemployed to becoming unemployable is to become a bandit or to lose your integrity capital. And our people are wise enough to know that that is so. So if you look at the strategic nature of the institutions that are being attacked, you will see that what they just want to do is to create a state of an ungoverned space, so that a criminal justice system will collapse and people can no longer apprehend or take people or prosecute people. So civil authority is what they are attacking. Now, back to your question. Here in Abia State, we realized this problem back in 2015. And we don't believe in palliatives here. We try to tackle the problems from first principles. It may take time. It may seem as if something is not happening, but certainly that is the way to go. Our panacea is, while we do the things we need to do, encourage startup businesses, encourage small and medium scale enterprises, support automation of businesses, and create market share for our people to participate in a larger platform. We must be able to create a Nimba economic city for us here in Abia and in the Southeast, because this economic city promises to provide 600,000 jobs at once. And it's about creating a manufacturing platform for all of us. And with the African free trade, we think that is what we need to do everywhere. Because if we have these opportunities for people to take up jobs and work, then we can speak to the problem of unemployment squarely. Giving 10,000 naira or 20,000 naira every month may solve the problem that day, but it creates appetite. Once it creates appetite and it cannot be sustained, then what do? It is the appetite of consumption, which crude oil has created in this country, that has moved us away from a manufacturing country into a consumption country. So we must look at the social implications of the measures we take. That is my intervention.
To follow up on that, Your Excellency, this Enyimba economic city, which we understand this was promised, while you came on board, and time is running out, because we understand at the moment that People are still fighting over their acquisition of land without compensation. Then they're saying you promised to create 700,000 jobs. So you barely have 1 year of active work before, who knows, politics kicks in. What's going on? Because it appears as if nothing is happening.
No. A lot of things are happening. That project, first of all, let me correct an impression. There is no problem of land acquisition anywhere. When you acquire 9,000 hectares of land in a place as small as Abia, you must have a conversation in a continuous manner with landowners. Everybody is on board on that project. What has happened is that this project is a transgenerational project. It's not the quick fixes that Nigeria know about. You need time to create an entirely new city. You need time to create a mentality that this is possible, this is feasible, and this is where we are going. We experienced some setback during the COVID, but the international community has embraced this project, and they are coming up with all kinds of collaborations, including funding. So what we are waiting for is the anchor investors to come and begin, to do groundbreaking and begin construction. Meanwhile, we are almost ready to start with the big infrastructure, because we need to do a big road that will take us to all parts of Southeast and South within 1 hour, 30 minutes. And that is where we are now. We are on course despite the setback of COVID-19. And we are, eyes on the ball looking at it. But I want to say to you that the era of quick fixes in Abia is gone. We take time. We must do drainage before we do a road. We do cement on the road and do asphalt at the end of the day. It takes time, but we will do it. I don't want to take an immediate glory in place of sustainable development. But I assure you that before 2023, we will certainly see a clear picture of where we're going. And finally, that particular project has taken up a life of its own. It's not a state government project anymore. It's being driven by forces that are now beyond Abia State. And
of the 700,000 jobs you promised, correct us if we're wrong on that one, how many jobs has been created at the moment?
Oh, well, that takes me back to what I've been trying to move you away from. Some jobs are in place there, especially people are doing construction. There's a new university coming up there now, which will be ready for commissioning this year. There's a new shoe factory going on there, and all of that. So if you want me to tell you our effort in job creation, apart from Enyimba Economic City, that would be a good question for me to respond to. But specifically on Enyimba Economic City, I assure you that there's a university there, there's a shoe factory going on there today, and there are 7 companies that are involved in conversion of metal to other products, like the conversion of plastics to batteries, managed by Chinese. So a lot of activities are going on, and but these are people's businesses, and very soon everybody will see what we're doing in that flank.
Okay, what's going on with teachers? Because at the moment, we understand that public schools have been short, primary, secondary schools, owing to outstanding salaries at the moment, and even polytechnics, Abia Teaching Hospital. Some of them are complaining that you've not attended to the backlog of salaries they've got. What's happening in that regard?
Thank you very much. We have about 24,000 workers in Abia State, and as I speak, 20,000 of these workers are up to speed in salary as I speak. But there are a few agencies, parastatals, that are having issues with salaries. And in Abia, under my watch, what we talk about is wage bill management and not salary payment. Wage bill management in the sense that we must try to see the workers, we must try to evaluate their output, and we must now begin to think of how to pay. Primary school teachers, I think their salary is up to speed. The ones we have issue is the secondary school teachers. Last year, December, to be specific, we paid 3 months, and we promised to continue to pay the current month and edge off on what is outstanding. The issue of salary is an issue that I inherited. I recall that in 2015, I was able to pay 11 months to the Abia State Teaching Hospital. Some of them who were earning 500,000 a month went home with 5 million naira, 550 million naira, or 5.5 million naira that month. So I hadn't stayed 11 months at that time. So it's an ongoing conversation. But my problem with that hospital is that they mismanaged their wage bill system and bloated their wage bill system. And we have told them that we commit 139 million naira every month. And yet they claim that their revenue is 6 million naira. And we're saying that that is not good enough. You must do something about your internally generated revenue while you match with the subvention we give to you so that you can run. They said they needed the road to be done to that place, and that road is almost completed now. So we want everybody to be on board so that we can work together. The same thing is the narrative with Abia State Polytechnic. We have gotten to the root of the matter. At a point in that polytechnic, we had 60 people manning 2 gates. We had 170 people working in the canteen. And we are saying that government is not a Father Christmas anymore. You are aware that from 2015 till now, the government at the center and in the various states, most of the states, have been on life support. The times are not easy at all. And we are asking that the time for free lunch is gone. So gradually, we will bring these parastatals and the schools that are worried that by salary problem up to speed with the rest of the state going forward. Starting from my promise in December to pay backlog with the current month, I think we will get there. I've heard a conversation with the teachers, and I'm expecting that with what we have done, they also received 3 months backlog of salary in December, and I was surprised that they came up with a strike this January. And if our conversation fails, it may mean that we will apply the principle of no work, no pay.
You'll understand why they need to go on strike, because for some of them, they feel that they have worked and they need to be paid. But those are the ones working. What about the ones that are retired, specifically retired primary school teachers? In fact, one of our viewers specifically, Chijindu, wants to know their fate. He says that these old people have gone through verification and yet they're still owed 22 months arrears. What's going on in that area?
I have said it time and time again that pension management is an ongoing issue and problem, not only in Abia, but in most places. The pensioners in Abia are not angry with government. The reason is that before now, it used to take 2 years before you enter into the payroll for pension. But now we have deployed science and technology to ensure that once you get out of service, you begin to receive the current pension going forward. Those who mismanage the pension of the state are not politicians. They are the civil servants. They are the same people who bloated the pension scheme, put people who were dead, people who were long gone out of this earth as pensioners. And the bill, so each day, each month, we keep discovering pattern of pension, and it becomes far more. I'll give you an example. I commissioned a study last month and to enable me pay the January pension. And what I discovered was that the figure given to me by the leadership of the pensioners in the various local government tallied together was far less than what the pensions board was providing. The civil servants at the pension board was provided as the data in the state. And we had to now remove the SS non-existent ghost pensioners to be able to get enough money to pay the current pensioners. And I think that payment is ongoing as I speak to you. So we are saying that this government is committed to the welfare of our workers. That is why we are paying 95% of all the workers regularly. All other parastatals and issues, schools and the polytechnic, they should sit up. What we give to the polytechnic is subvention. We don't pay salary to polytechnic lecturers, and we are saying this because the management of a polytechnic can decide to go and employ Professor Wole Soyinka to teach literature. Then you must be able to pay him, So it's up to you to manage your workforce. If you have 170 people working in the canteen and now you can't pay them, it becomes your problem and not the state problem. And
so just before we wrap this up, sir, Excellency, could you talk to us about this Abia microfinance? There are reports circulating that about 200 million naira was misappropriated by that agency. Is that correct?
That is fallacy. That agency doesn't have that 250 million naira to be misappropriated by anybody. What happened is that at some point we wanted to support the small and medium scale enterprises in Abia. And part of their problem and challenge was financing. And we didn't want the destiny of these people to be left in the hands of the big financing agencies controlled by the federal government. We needed to create a small microfinance bank through which they can aggregate their activities and, if possible, even use it to access support from the federal government. And that was how we acquired that microfinance bank. But information came that a certain amount of money was supposed to be paid. 250 million naira was supposed to be paid to CBN and all of that. And I think that has been resolved. But it is not a question of misappropriation at all. Nobody can take 250 million and have that kind of money.
Okay, Your Excellency, what we'll do is perhaps we'll schedule another time where we can take on some of these other matters that we couldn't accommodate for this segment. But we do thank you for your time this morning. We've been speaking with His Excellency Okezie Ikpeazu, Governor of Abia State. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we're shifting gears now to developmental leadership issues. And we've got, as you've seen there, Professor Kingsley Moghalu joining us this morning from the state. He's a former deputy governor of the CBN. He was a presidential candidate in the 2019 elections. He's currently serving as the United Nations Development Program Special Envoy on Post-COVID Development Finance for Africa. Good morning. Very early, I must say, from your time there. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
All right, so let's start off with this just briefly about your UNDP functions, COVID funding for Africa. I think we just saw some of the dailies here today that the governor of Ekiti State was speaking at Chatham House, saying Nigeria raised, I think, about $95 million for COVID in Nigeria. How is your role, or what is your role regarding how does it benefit Nigeria? They say it starts from home.
Yes, thank you. At the beginning of December, the United Nations Development Program approached me and asked me to take on a high-level special assignment as its special envoy on post-COVID development finance for Africa. And the whole task and the whole point is this. Everybody knows that the COVID pandemic has had a huge financial and economic impact on Africa, as it has in many parts of the world, but African countries have been far less able to cope with it and have had to go into a lot of borrowing to respond to the fiscal stress of COVID. And so I was asked to lead a team based in New York to assess the level of stress on various countries' finances and economies on the continent, and to recommend alternative ways that African countries can raise resources, mostly from their own countries, to respond to the pandemic and stabilize their economies. So this is what it is, and we're working on this assignment currently. and we expect to complete it in about a couple of months. And there will be a high-level event where our report will be launched to the international community with recommendations to African countries, including Nigeria, of course, on how they can get out of this stress.
We look forward to that and hope that all ends well. And then about this latest venture of yours, you have your hands in a lot of things, as a matter of fact. This one called the NC Front. We understand there's a new political movement that was launched alongside yourself, Professor Utomi, and several others. Tell us about it. What is the ideology behind this movement?
Well, the National Consultative Front is not a political party, I must hasten to be clear. It is a political movement of concerned Nigerians, and it was convened by several notable Nigerians who are passionate about the future of our country, people like Olisa Obakoba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Pat Utomi, Umar Galina Abba, Obadiah Mailafia, Hakim Baba Ahmed, myself, Professor Mrs. Remi Shonaya, and several others. So the whole point of the National Consultative Front is to really serve as a rallying point, as a cry to the conscience of Nigerians, for Nigerians themselves to really stand up and decide their future, take their future in their hands. We're calling for a constitutional reform, most important. That's really the main focus of the National Consultative Front, that Nigeria's framework has to be renegotiated to make Nigeria function very well and very effectively. So that's we're also calling for electoral reforms. And of course, we're concerned very deeply about the current crisis of insecurity in our country.
So you said categorically that the NC Front is not a political party, but you also say that you need Nigerians to come on board. So I'm wondering, how will that happen? Because for a lot of people, they see political parties as that platform that will give you a voice to make the kind of changes you want to make. So what exactly is the game plan here? Because in that statement you put out, you said that you want to first mobilize Nigerians for a brand new people's constitution that can be that can enable Nigeria work for all and be rid of corruption and self-aggrandizement. But how will that work, really? How strong and how do you plan to galvanize people without being a political party?
Well, there are many ways. I think if you want to be objective about it, there are many ways on many platforms on which Nigerians have been and can be galvanized. There are civil society movements. There are, religious bodies. There are just ordinary citizens that you can reach through the media. So citizen action is the name of the game. And even though, of course, the whole goal is political, but not at this point in a partisan way. It is for the good of all. And we are simply serving as a catalyst at this point to mobilize Nigerians to renegotiate their future. Our constitution we need to have a people's constitution that makes Nigeria work. And that's not where we are at this time. I think that's very clear to everyone.
So the National Assembly, as it is now, is currently going through a constitution review process. They have asked for submissions from various people and groups, and those submissions are coming in. Now, the thing is, you're planning to get Nigerians together, but at the end of the day, the decisions will be made at the National Assembly. You've made some recommendations, that is, but so how do you plan to link this really such that what your group or the ideas that you come up with will translate well to the National Assembly, and eventually when this process starts, those recommendations and ideas that you have put forward will indeed be part of what would be implemented? How do you plan to link that connect? Because it's political parties that are there at the National Assembly.
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to tell you that it's not, the National Assembly being involved and the Nigerian people being involved, they're not mutually exclusive. The reality of today, though, and let me just start from the basics. We believe that what Nigeria needs is a new constitution. not a panel-beaten current constitution. Because the challenges that Nigeria faces in terms of nationhood today are so fundamental and so deep. The divides are so strong that perhaps, and the loss of legitimacy of the Nigerian state. Many Nigerians today do not see the Nigerian state as legitimate in their own eyes. And the best way to do this is to fashion out a people's constitution. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there is no role for the National Assembly, but I think that the National Assembly itself has become part of the crisis of legitimacy in the eyes of the Nigerian people. And so people need to come together in some form to be also part of this process, whether it's in the form of some sort of national conference or what. Those are things that can be decided as we go along. But there is need for a far wider approach to a new constitution for Nigeria if it is to have the necessary legitimacy that will stabilize our country going forward.
Well, the challenge of legitimacy is most certainly something of concern, and it's something that has been talked about over and over again. But then, as Kayode has said, the decisions are made at the level of people who have political office, who have political power, who can take decisions on behalf of the people. So that leads to the question of the leadership recruitment system, because if we do not have the right kind of people, the right set of people in power, the question of trust, the question of legitimacy in the eyes of the people is going to be there. So question then to you is, what is the issue with our leadership recruitment system, and how can people take ownership of that process, even with the laws that we have?
Yes. Well, let me tell you, first of all, the issue with the current recruitment system. The current recruitment system is a political industrial complex that works in favor of the political class, but does not work in favor of the people. And so, therefore, it subverts the very purpose of development, which is to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's become essentially, our democracy has descended into a government by politicians, for politicians, and of politicians. And this is not what democracy is supposed to be. And this is why we have a crisis of legitimacy today. The Nigerian people can see that their hopes and aspirations are not represented in the work broadly of the political class today. Now, this is not a sweeping condemnation of everybody who is a politician, but the fact is that as a class, the politicians have not delivered what Nigerians expect from them. Now, the way to go forward is that Nigerian citizens themselves who have a role to play, and they themselves have also not played this role as actively as they should, which is that they are actually the boss. They are the boss of the politicians. They're supposed to be the ones whose voice is heard. What they want is what is supposed to be done. But because they are weak, because they are poor, because they are hungry, because they are illiterate, the politicians have actually now turned to using them to legitimize themselves and to keep themselves in power every 4-year cycle. So we have a ritual of democracy, but denies the power thereof of a real democracy. And what happens is that Nigerians have fallen for a scam. They vote for structures, political structures, that are able to win elections, quote unquote, however, but they're not able to govern effectively. And this is where we need to get Nigerian citizens to say, look, we now need to begin to select leaders, not just successful politicians. That's the point of public education I think we need to engage in and on.
Pretty much nailed the problem, which is that of poverty at various levels, not just of of the pocket and all of that, but even of capacity for people to do the things that they need to do. So at a time when people say that poverty has been weaponized, how then do the people think differently from the way they are thinking now, given, as you have said, that they are very, very limited at this point?
Yes, but it's not, all hope is not lost. We're not supposed to sit around and admire the problem and throw our hands up in the air and say, well, it's what it is. No, That's why Nigerians of conscience have stepped forward and they've said we need to educate. We need to educate our people to know what they should do, to know how to select leadership, to be informed voters. There are many groups involved in this. It's not just the National Consultative Front, I should be clear. For example, I'm part of another group called To Build a Nation, TBAN, and we are also involved in massive education campaigns for the citizens of Nigeria. So people need to be re-educated politically. We need to have politically conscious Nigerians, not just people who focus on, going after their daily bread and forget the fact that when you do that, you actually leave the space to be populated by all kinds of people who may turn out to be the wrong kinds of people. So we have lots of successful transactional politicians in Nigeria, but leadership is quite scarce. And we need to train the focus on leadership. What is a leader? At the level of a local government, at the level of a state assembly, at the level of a governor, at the level of the National Assembly, at the level of the presidency. We need men and women of vision, men and women of character, men and women of integrity, people who are committed and live and breathe the prosperity and the security of Nigeria. That's the kind of people we should be electing into public office and appointing into public office.
Well, it would seem that that pool of people which you just talked about seems to be decreasing by the minute. And it looks like they're I don't know if they're, very available amongst young people, who just haven't been noticed just yet. However, when you talk about the people shying away from their responsibility and not having owned their role as bosses of the politicians, some people will say perhaps they just don't know how. So, for instance, we saw the Sorosoke movement, the End SARS movement last year, and a lot of people had high hopes that perhaps that could transform or transmute itself into some political movement. But that is yet to happen. Assuming that were to happen, assuming we were to, get some of the benefits from that coming into mainstream politics, how would you suggest that sort of movement, becomes that which is more than just a protest, but also getting involved actively in politics?
Yes. First of all, the NSAS, protests by the youth. I'm speaking about the actual peaceful NSAS. I'm not talking about the various mutations that later came up, like variants of the COVID pandemic. What we are talking about is the actual protest itself that was peaceful and legitimate. First of all, it gives us hope that all hope is not lost. It tells us that our young people are finally coming to realize that the future of Nigeria belongs to them, and they have to make a choice as to whether, the posterity of Nigeria will belong to them or whether all they will do is simply to inherit our foreign debts. So in terms of translating that, the way to go is to go into structural politics. That is to say, to join political parties, to be able to vote, to register and to vote, and to be able to be voted for. And that brings us to the current electoral bill amendment question. That is so critical. Even as we fight or struggle for a new constitution, the immediate thing before us is the Electoral Amendment Act. It's the low-hanging fruit because it will be completed within the next couple of months, hopefully, and we should insist that it provides a transparent process of electing our leaders where our votes count, not just the people who count the votes, not just the people who count the votes count, but our votes count. So that's what we should ensure. And I personally believe that this should be done through a system of electronic voting, electronic transmission of results. And as I have said, anything that creates loopholes and gaps for election results to be fiddled with or to be manipulated, we must avoid it, because that's part of what removes confidence from our democratic process and leaves a lot of citizens apathetic because they say, well, they will just rig the election now, so why should I bother? We have to move away from this.
And some people will say that, to a large extent, we have been able to tackle electoral fraud. Yes, sometimes it does look like we make 2 steps forward and then take 1 step back. However, it does appear that we're making some progress with the electoral system. There are those who believe that electronic voting does not hold the be-all, end-all of political malfeasance. Because you just talked about a structure. The fact that what it seems that Nigerians do every 4 years is uphold an electoral, a political structure, which is then unable to govern. The question is, how do you change the internal workings of political parties, particularly the major political parties, in such a way that they're able to eventually deliver the dividends of democracy? Yes, there were parties like yours, which a lot of people also felt had hope, but gaining ground, mainstream, so to speak, was a challenge. You don't agree?
Well, yes, first of all, let me be clear. Right now, I do not belong to any political party. I'm operating on a non-partisan basis at this time. And of course, if and when I join another political party or any political party, I will make that announcement. So that's just to be very clear, factually speaking. Now, I do not believe this myth, this emphasis in quote unquote major political parties. Nigeria is still a very young democracy. And I think that all parties have a chance. And even though, yes, we have a couple of dominant ones right now, but if we go by recent history, we don't know what the future will be. In 2013 or 2012, there was only the PDP, which was busy boasting that it would rule Nigeria for the next 60 years. And within a year or two, it was out of power from another formation. So as we move along, there'll be shifting sands as we build our culture of democracy. And what our parties need to do, all parties, not just the so-called major parties, is to train their candidates in leadership. And there are many initiatives that are going on now, including the one called Fixed Politics right now, that are quite good in terms of the desire to train candidates or potential candidates about what they should be and what they should do if and when they get to office. So it's a matter of training for leadership at every level of the political engagement, local, state, national. That's what should happen. And all political parties must invest in this process. That's the way forward.
Well, Prof, you contested, campaigned, moved around different parts of the country seeking to be elected. Ultimately, it didn't turn out the way you want. But at the moment, we've got a lot of young people who, quite frankly, are frustrated. They live in the country. They're thinking about leaving the country right now. They'll grab any chance of that they've got. But you're still optimistic. What gives you optimism thinking that these things could work out?
Well, the process of building a nation, it takes time. Nobody's happy about where Nigeria is 60 years from independence. We cannot generate more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity. That's just a crying shame. In terms of your reference to my run, and it didn't end how I would have wished. Yes, but that's part of the political process. Don't forget that the man who is the president today ran 4 times. And on the 4th occasion, he won. So in politics, there are different kinds of victories. There is the victory that you may achieve today at a ballot box, but there may be longer term kinds of strategic victories. And that's the context in which I saw my first attempt in 2019. I was not a money bag, but yet we were able to raise hope and a lot of enthusiasm on the part of millions of Nigerians. And I think if we had had a better electoral system, you might have seen different results. Not necessarily that we would have defeated the APC and the PDP, but the results that were announced may have been rather different if the system was more transparent. So I take the point that our political electoral system is creepingly improving. The Edo State elections, I think, were an improvement on what happened in Kogi State. And we are hoping that in 2023, we will see even better organized elections. But the key is for INEC to engage in voter registration as early as possible. That's the key. Start registering new voters. and start making your preparations operationally. Do not wait until the election is upon you, and then you have to postpone elections and disenfranchise millions of people.
Prof, it will seem like the Pareto principle is what is always at play in our politics. Let me take an angle of Chimile's question to you. Now, having gone all over Nigeria, seen all kinds of things, depending on whose data you're looking at, a good number of Nigerians are youths, especially the voting population. More than 50% at the least are youths.
Absolutely.
Now, also in the voting population are a good number of people who are very, very lowly educated and who are easily moved by whatever it is that they hear from anyone. Taking them through that political education, both the youths who are themselves, as Chamberlain said, frustrated and depressed and almost lacking, direction or vision or hope for the future, getting them to line up to this optimism that you have is quite a task. And bringing them on board of nationhood, of hopes in this nation is quite a task. Yet, the nation must move on. And these youths that we're talking about are the future of the nation. So,
absolutely,
you would say that it's quite a task. How do we take this on?
Yes, I mean, many of us are already taking on this task. I personally have been engaged with a lot of youth groups. When I ran in 2019, most of my support came from young people, young men and women, who I believed then and still believe now are the hope of our future. No country, no nation can regenerate itself without its youth. The young shall grow and the old shall die. This is a biological fact. And therefore, it presents us with an imperative that our young people must stand up, take the bull by the horns, and do the work of nation building. So we are engaging with young people all over the country. And I personally am doing so quite a lot. And I think that from the End SARS movement, again, it seemed as if it's gone into, shall we say, abeyance. But don't assume so. Don't assume that spirit cannot be awakened again if necessary. So I think young people need to. That has shown them that they themselves can do it. They have more confidence in themselves now, And I think that as we go along towards 2023 and 2027 and future elections, young people will take on a more and more robust role in Nigeria's democracy. That's already happening, but we would like to see it happen even faster.
So we wind down now, Prof. This political movement, because we're reading in some quarters that eventually the long-term goal or plan is that it will be a mega party. So what happens at that stage?
Yes, I mean, look, like I said, the NCF at this point is a political movement of, concerned Nigerians. And their focus right now is not a short-term focus of elections or 2023. Their main focus right now is to address the foundations of the Nigerian state in a positive way. And that is to have a new people's constitution. But the movement does not rule out evolving into a political platform in the future that could contest elections. So that's what I'm saying. And I think it's very important that we're accurate in, representing the work of the National Consultative Forum. Nigerians love to hear about political parties, new this, new that, but we must be accurate. Certainly I will be in presenting the National Consultative Forum. At this time, it is not a political party. It is a political movement of concerned Nigerians. The future, who can tell?
Okay. Well, at the moment, if we get the electoral act passed by the National Assembly, I think they talk about sometime in June or thereabout. So if that goes well and is signed into law by the president, will there still be so much of a need for us to get a new constitution? Because if we get the Electoral Act, chances are that we would have started addressing the leadership recruitment process, the challenge that we've got with that.
Because that's a very important points that you have raised. Now, an amended electoral act that provides for truly transparent elections helps a lot in the process of nation building and selecting our leaders and recruiting our leaders, yes. But there are problems that we have in Nigeria today that are so foundational that regardless of who you elect, those problems will remain very serious and debilitating for us as a country if we do not change our constitution. The number one is this, that Nigeria is supposedly the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but in reality, we are not practicing federalism the way we should. The center is too powerful. And that is stifling the growth of the country's different regions. It is creating a lot of ethnic tension because of the struggle for power in Abuja. Whereas if a lot of powers were devolved downward locally to the regions and they can run their own affairs, Nigeria will make far more progress, because as every region and every state is making progress, the collective, the whole country is making progress. This is why we need a new constitution. And this is why without a new constitution that brings about a true federalism, the dependence on oil, the worship of the God of small things, as I call it, will continue. And we will continue to borrow, we'll continue to be stressed. Even if you have competent leaders, they will be like Sisyphus, rolling the big boulder up the hill, but never quite being able to go across the top. And the stone will always drag them back. They try again, it drags them back. The best way to solve this is through constitutional reform.
Thank you for talking to us this morning, Professor Kingsley Moghalu.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, so there you go. We'll got one more lap to go. Stay with us.
Well, yes, we're still talking about the state of the polity, and there are so many things in that basket titled State of the Polity. Right now, we're focusing largely more on security, particularly the accusation of the Benue State, or the alarm raised by the Benue State government, perhaps that's what we should tag it, that there were herdsmen on one side of the river Benue, on the Nasarawa side, who were planning to cross into Benue. And as you're aware, they have no free grazing law in Benue State. They want everyone to be in ranches if you're a herdsman. And they have raised the alarm because they think that it potentially could cause problems, security problems in Benue. We have with us this morning Zachary's Gundu, who is a professor of archaeology from Nemadu Bello University, and he is with us here in our Abuja studio as to, what precisely we should be doing, or why it would seem that so far so good, even though we have heard this alarm for about 2 days now. The security agencies are yet to issue any reaction whatsoever to that particular situation. Prof, you're welcome to the program this morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm just wondering, what were your thoughts when you heard that particular, I don't know, alarm is the only word I can think of right now, or should we say alert, yes, being raised by the deputy governor, he's now the acting governor of Benue State, as to what they see could be a potential problem for them in Benue?
Well, I was worried too. It's actually not an alarm, it's an alert. Because if you remember, in the past 2 weeks or so, the governor of Nasarawa State visited Abuja and met with the president and told him that Boko Haram is regrouping on the Nasarawa-Benue border. And that is quite clear that Boko Haram and herdsmen are actually coalescing into one. And if the Benue State government is saying that they are trying to cross over into Benue, I think it's an alert that should be taken seriously by any person who is worried about the insecurity in this country.
Well, we haven't quite heard anything. And some people will say that alarm is a matter of perspective. It depends on who is, saying what. And just how big a threat you view it. If it's like saying, I see a potential fire, it could be an alert, it could be an alarm, you know.
Well, it depends on who is raising this.
Yes.
If a governor of a state visits a president and says that Boko Haram are on my border with a neighboring state, and then a week or so after that, the governor of a neighboring state, the neighboring state, says that there are people in the nearby state who are trying to cross over, I think it should be seriously considered. Governors don't speak frivolously. Governors speak because they know what they are saying. And in Benue State particularly, over the time, the Fulanis who have ravaged the state normally come from Nasarawa State. So it's actually a pattern. During Amakura's time, when the Fulanis would assemble in Nasarawa to attack Benue, he used to call them international hunters. He was hiding the fact that these people were actually herdsmen who were going to Benue to do havoc. So he would call them international hunters. But I'm trying to say that when governors speak, we should take them seriously because they are not speaking from the streets.
And it's about the season. It would seem that every year, at the beginning of the year, when the dry season is getting towards its peak, we begin to see incidences like this, something that could result potentially in loss of lives. So far, so good. We haven't heard any official response. Yes, we heard the governor of Nasarawa State, take his alerts to the president, and he told journalists what he went to tell the president. We did not hear an official response in that. I don't know if you heard any response in that regard, but we didn't get any response from the presidency in that regard. Now, for how many days, we've heard the alert also being raised by the government of Benue State. And I don't know if you have received any reaction. What sort of response should we have been expecting? Because some people might say maybe they have actually mobilized and we're just waiting for words. But so far, maybe the words might delay a bit in coming in.
Well, actually, this presidency is acting true to type. They really don't say anything, even when they are supposed to say something. But the correct position would be that if there's an alert of this magnitude, you come in to assure people. We need to be assured in this country that we are safe, that we are being protected. When there's no assurance, it's as if they are telling people, okay, this thing may happen. If you don't want it, just resort to self-help. And that is not good enough.
All of this is happening within a larger context. So we saw last week and 2 weeks before that, we saw what was happening in the Southwest. We saw an eviction notice, which was issued by the governor of Ondo State, telling herdsmen to leave the forest reserves. That came shortly on the heels of an eviction notice, which was given by an activist, in quote, telling herdsmen to leave a particular area of Oyo State. We saw, some violence in the wake of that. Now, today, we're also seeing the Northern Elders Forum asking the president to protect herders who are in the Southwest or in the south of the country in general, and asking herdsmen who, have any problems to come back up north. We also heard just a few days ago the governor of Kano State saying that perhaps the solution to this problem will be to prevent herdsmen from going down south and keeping them from moving from north to south. So there have been a few things, all of this pertaining to farmer, herdsmen, potential crisis, or where there could be a crisis. What are your thoughts? I mean, because of course there is a thread linking all of that. There is suspicion, there is distrust, there is a conflict as a result of the security fallouts, the perceived security fallouts. In many instances, suspicion that cases of kidnapping that we've seen, especially in the South, and even killings were carried out by people who were pretending to be herdsmen, or in many instances, people believed to be herdsmen. How do we begin to, detangle, it would seem, some of the confusion that we're seeing around farmer and herdsmen conflict, so to speak?
Well, there are several things, in my opinion, we can begin to do, which we have not been doing, which are really unfortunate. The first thing we are supposed to do is to even know how many herds do we have in the country, how many herds of livestock, how many herds of cattle do we have in the country, what is the carrying capacity of states, what is the carrying capacity of the forests which have been taken over by some of these herdsmen. Who are these herdsmen? How many are we dealing with?
To what end? What purpose would that serve, and how is that really a venture that is a feasible venture, considering the nomadic nature of the herdsmen that we have?
It's a feasible venture because if you know the number of herds you are dealing with, then you will begin to know that the only way you can have peace is to regulate livestock production and put the livestock on ranches. The herds are too many. And of course, if you know the number of people you are dealing with, the people who are herding these cattle and the people who own the cattle, if there are issues, you know who to speak with. I'll give you an example. The Ondo government, when they asked the herdsman to vacate the forest, they had to speak with a Fulani group called Makban. Makban is just one of the several Fulani groups that are organized and indiscriminately grazing across the country. There's Ganala. There's also Kautahare, Meati Kautahare. And these are very active, and they are also very violent. So when you have a problem in Ondo State and you call only Makban, you have issues. What do you do with the other two? In fact, after the Ondo meeting, Ganala, which is led by some character in Jos, came out clearly and said that whatever Makban had agreed with Ondo State government, they are not in the agreement. But there's also an important aspect. Most of the herds that are being grazed across the country are owned by people who are not even Nigerians. They are outside this country. So the people who you see around going with this cattle are only working for people who are outside the country. And if anything happens within this country and there's supposed to be a reaction from the Fulani, it is the people outside who handle the logistics and who order the reprisals. If you don't know them, you cannot speak to them. That is probably why at a point in time, I think 2016 or so, El-Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State, had actually confessed that he had to look for these people outside Nigeria and pay them some form of ransom. Unfortunately, he paid them, but the people continued coming to attack. So it's as if he just took government money, gave to the Fulani of the whole world, who continued to attack us. So if you don't know some of these things, it is difficult to actually work towards a lasting and sustainable solution. For example, when Akeredolu says, the governor of Ondo says, vacate my own forests, does he know the capacity of these forests? Of course, I agree with his own order because these forest reserves were not established as grazing areas. So if you allow people to graze in before you know what is happening, there will even be no grass there for any person to work on. So they will just ravage the environment just as the Sahel has been ravaged, just as the Greater Lake Chad has been ravaged. And then we'll go back to square one.
So you were proposing solutions. You say, first and foremost, we should register or at least take a population census of the amount of livestock we have. And maybe of the herdsmen.
Yes, and who owns these cattle?
But when we say that they don't live in, lots of them do not own, the owners don't live here, in Nigeria or they're not Nigerians, isn't that a futile exercise?
It's not a futile exercise. El-Rufai already knows some of these people who are outside this country and are grazing in Nigeria. And of course, if you are doing a census, then these people will tell you where they are from. Then you will be able to document.
Because the first question I asked you was whether that was a feasible exercise. And then one of the reasons I asked is that migration, migration, especially of cattle, usually happens about this time.
Yes.
When, the pasture is greener down south than up north.
Yes.
So how do we do we have to time it in such a way that, we want to capture those who also come into the country from outside the country? Or is it just our own people who are local to Nigeria that we want to capture in such an exercise?
I think there are two levels of doing this. It will be difficult, but it can be done. Can we know those who are Nigerians who are grazing within our borders? Can we know that first? Can we also know those who are not Nigerians but are coming in from outside to graze? Of course, that is a very difficult thing because we have about 84 former borders, land borders in Nigeria, just 84. But there are about 1,400 informal land borders, which means that checking people coming in is quite difficult. But if we really value security, if we really value the lives and property of our own citizens, we have to do whatever it takes to protect this country, especially from herdsmen who are coming from outside. Because as far as I'm concerned, we don't owe them any grazing land. We don't owe the Fulani of the whole world any grazing land in this country. Okay, those who are in this country, yes, we do. But of course, if states decide for whatever reasons to say that within my own state boundaries, you have to ranch before you keep livestock, so be it, because they are entitled to regulate something as sensitive as livestock production.
But, as you rightly pointed out, we're yet to get any word, so to speak, from the authorities, especially at the federal level. So, apart from registering, livestock and the owners of livestock, what more should we be doing?
Well, I think states should go on and do the needful. When Ganduje, the governor of Kano State, says that, look, let the federal government ban open grazing, and let them ban herdsmen, moving from one part of the country to the other. It really doesn't make sense. He's not talking as somebody who knows that Nigeria is a federation. The federating units can regulate the economic activities that take place within their own states. So let Ganduje, if he really thinks that open grazing is not good, say that within Kano State, there is no open grazing. And the states that say that they should be open grazing, let every person who wants to graze openly flood there. Let there be respect within the boundaries. That way we will be running this country very well. But to think that the federal government should be the ones making the law on something that is on the concurrent list really doesn't make sense.
Well, he has asked herdsmen in the past to come to Kano State, if they're ejected from other states, that his state was open. But he also identified, that's in the past, he also identified a problem, because according to him, if you to look at that statement extensively, when he talked about the federal government stopping the movement of herders from north to south, he also believes it would help to solve the problem of cattle rustling, which is something that states in the north have had to face. I'm not certain if it's the same problem that we're all dealing with, but there seems to be a general thread of bandits. You talked about Boko Haram lumping up with herdsmen, so to speak. And this has been pointed out by the statement of those who should know, so to speak. However, in the north, we've also seen a problem of banditry, particularly in the northwest of the country. There was a time when the 7 governors of the northwest had to come together to flush out bandits from the forest. Do you think that they wear a different face or they wear a different name when they're in the south of the country? Or are we dealing with the same set of people, but under different names?
Let me start from the Ganduje angle. This is a governor who has clearly said that, look, I'm providing some grazing areas for those who want to graze to come in. And no person is taking him seriously. They would rather go and graze in other places. This is heightening the suspicion in people's minds that really it is not about grazing areas. It is just about land grabbing. But I'll stop at that and go back to looking at this phenomena of banditry.
But before you do, let us also put it in context. You agreed that this migration happens mostly in the dry season.
Yes.
Where there is little or no pasture in the north of the country.
Yes.
And, people, they are seeking greener pasture for their cattle. Does it really make any sense when a governor in a state like Kano says, my state is open for open grazing, when the state of the state in the dry season? No,
well, there are areas of Kano, the areas Ganduje is saying come and graze, are areas that have been properly provided for. There's water, there's pasture. These are forest areas that have been properly provided for. So it makes sense. And it is totally suspicious that the Fulanis...
We have that proven?
Yes, it is. Go to Kano. Go to Kano. These are areas, you see Kano, the rural areas of the north. If you go to Kano, if you go to Katsina, if you go to parts of Sokoto, these are areas where they developed a lot of big dams. And these dams were supposed to feed into rural areas. There's green pasture for cattle to come in to graze. And people are not taking advantage of this. And because they are not taking advantage of this, people are suspicious, people are suspicious. Why are you not taking advantage of this when you are supposed to be taking advantage of it? There's suspicion. If you have this land in Kano, why are you not grazing in Kano? Why do you want to go and graze in the forest in Ondo State? And of course, if you ravage that forest, it means you are going to spill over into the farms. And you are going to create problems when you spill over.
So tell us about banditry. You're about to say something on banditry.
I think it's good for Nigerians to know now that the phenomena of Boko Haram, the phenomena of herdsmen, and the phenomena of banditry is coalescing into one at the moment. It's coalescing into one at the moment. And I don't know whether this is deliberate or it is just coincidental. But the truth of the matter is, if you go into any other area, the bandits and the herdsmen and then the Boko Haram are into one. Doesn't it intrigue anybody that Boko Haram that is operating in the northeast would suddenly jump and be on the Nasarawa-Benue border? It should be intriguing. It should be something which the security people should analyze. But for the bandits, it's not so difficult to understand what issues are at play. Much of the banditry you are seeing is actually in the northwest, around Zamfara. And people have clearly stated that the illegal gold mining activities of the Chinese in Zamfara is linked to banditry. Anywhere where the Chinese are doing something illegal, they try to trigger something that will be unstable so that people will not look at what they are doing clearly. In the Middle Belt, what you have is a different thing altogether. Much of the kidnappings and the banditry that started in the Middle Belt started in Kogi State, in the forests of Kogi State. If they took somebody from the southwest, they will bring them to the forest in Kogi. If it is in the southeast, they will bring it there. If it is in parts of the north, they will bring it there. And the Fulanis were in that forest, in the Kogi forests. So if they came to keep some of the people who were kidnapped, they will keep them with the Fulani. They will be feeding them. They will go out, no person suspects them, they will bring in food. And then when they are supposed to collect ransom, they will collect it for the criminals. But in the end, the criminals will not give them good money. And they knew this. If you collected 10 million and released somebody, and somebody collected that 10 million on your behalf and you gave the person 200,000 naira, he will know that you are cheating him. So before you knew what was happening, even the anthropology of the Fulanis themselves supported their coming into banditry because some of them, they had their cattle rustled. Their future was destroyed. So it was interesting that there was another alternative way of making money.
So it was something that happened by chance, so to speak?
Well, yes. I don't think it's something that happened as a result of developments within the forest. And now you have Fulanis who are now bandits themselves. They are living in this forest with their kith and kin. And their kith and kin are finding it difficult to fish them out, to betray them in quotes.
Well, Prof, it's so sad that we don't have the time to explore this new trajectory which you were exploring with the explanation you were given. But we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily. Zachary Gundu is a professor of archaeology at the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Well, that's it for Sunrise Daily this morning. We will not go without taking some of your comments. It's over now to you, gentlemen in Lagos.
Well, yes, we're going to start with this one from Musa Mohammed, who talks about repositioning Nigeria, saying, listening to Prof, Nigeria has political class that implements their strategy and plan, while we have the highly educated class that have their strategy and plan in perspective. The truth is, if the educated class don't go into politics, their plans will remain in perspective. Food for thought.
Now, Abdul Qadir tweets about open grazing, saying Governor Bazo is right. Ban on open grazing is very important and timely based on the current security and economic realities. However, it must be enforced by recognized authorities in order to avoid criminals taking laws into their hands. That doesn't even quite go well. Criminals and law.
Well, this is still in the same light. Law Alpha says the governor of Abia State is doing his best. But from the look of things, he needs to up his game by promptly paying workers and not allowing arrears to pile up.
As talking about Abia State, we're not feeling governance in Aba South. Also, the roads in the business hub is a disgrace. What are your contractors doing? Because your government awarded those contracts. The refuse dumps on the roads, and many, many more. Well, that's from Chooks Nadim.
Okay, well, I hope that the governor's team are listening, and I hope that they'll get some response to that one in the days ahead, if not sooner rather than later. Well, thank you all for your messages. We do thank you for watching today. As always, we will be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so.
I'm Kayode Okikiodu.
I am Ayo Makinde. Please be safe.
And I'm Malkwe Ogun Yusuf. Do have a lovely day.